A widower with grease under his fingernails walked into Hargrove Luxury Motors carrying an invoice that would unravel 12 years of fraud. He had 60 seconds before they called security. What the showroom floor didn't know was that the man in the worn work shirt had once designed the very engine sitting under the hood of their best-selling display car. The dealership smelled like money, not the real kind, the performed kind. Leather conditioner and synthetic new car scent pumped through vents. Soft piano music piped in from somewhere above the recessed lighting. Fletcher Vance pushed through the glass doors with his daughter Rosie's hand in his and felt the air change the moment they stepped inside. Too cold, too deliberate. His shirt had an oil stain on the left sleeve that he'd noticed in the truck mirror on the way over. He'd considered going back to change, decided against it. He wasn't here to impress anyone. "Daddy, look at that one." Rosie was 7, gap-toothed, still wearing the purple backpack she'd had on since he picked her up from school 40 minutes ago. She was pointing at a black SUV on the center platform, lit like a trophy. "That's a Meridian GT," he said. 400 horsepower, adaptive suspension, self-healing paint coating. He'd helped design the chassis mounting system on the second-generation model. 7 years ago, before everything changed. She nodded like she understood. She usually did. The reception desk sat at the far end of the showroom like a throne. Behind it, a woman in a blazer that cost more than Fletcher's monthly rent was already watching them. The kind of watch that wasn't curiosity, it was assessment. He walked toward her. Rosie's sneakers squeaked on the polished marble floor. One of her shoelaces was untied. He'd told her twice already. "Can I help you?" the woman said. Her nameplate read Courtney. Her smile reached exactly as far as it needed to, and no further. "I need to speak with the general manager." "Do you have an appointment?" "No appointment." Fletcher shifted the folder he was carrying. It was thick, held together with a rubber band, the corners soft from being handled too many times over the past 2 weeks. "I have documentation related to the extended warranty fraud your service department has been running on commercial fleet accounts." Something moved behind Courtney's eyes. Not alarm, more like the calculation of someone deciding how much this would cost to make disappear. "Sir, if you have a service complaint, there's a form." "It's not a service complaint." Fletcher kept his voice even. "I have invoices, internal repair records, and a cross-reference of parts ordered versus parts installed across 11 fleet vehicles. This is a 17-year-old warranty program being billed on vehicles that haven't existed for 6 years. Courtney's smile thinned. She picked up her phone. Fletcher heard her say security to reception before she'd even finished reaching for the handset. He didn't move. Rosie's pressed closer to his leg. She'd learned to read a room by watching him work. The way tension changed the air in a garage, when someone brought in a car they didn't want to tell you the truth about. She felt it now. She looked up at him. He gave her hand a small squeeze. 2 men in dark blazers materialized from a side corridor. The taller one had a jaw like a cinder block and the easy confidence of someone who'd done this dozens of times. The shorter one hung back, watching. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside." Cinderblock kept his voice professionally flat. "You can call to schedule a meeting with management during business hours." "I've called 11 times, Fletcher said. "The last 3 times, someone from corporate told me my account was flagged, and I shouldn't expect a callback. We're not going to be able to help you today. I'm not leaving until someone with authority looks at this folder." Cinderblock stepped forward, hand raised, not threatening, but clear in what it was offering. "Sir," the door. Rosie made a small sound against his leg. He looked down. Her eyes were wide, not terrified. She was too practical for terror, but something in her face reminded him of the morning 2 years ago when he'd had to tell her that her mother wasn't coming home. The way her expression had gone very still and very adult, doing the math faster than she should have had to at 5 years old. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, Rosie Bird." He let them walk him toward the door. Then a voice cut across the showroom, clear and unhurried, with the particular authority of someone who'd never had to raise it to be heard. "What's happening here?" Fletcher turned. She'd come down the far staircase, the one that led to the executive offices above the showroom floor. Late 40s, sharply dressed, silver threading through dark hair that she wore pulled back. She moved like someone who hadn't wasted a step in 20 years. Her nameplate was on her jacket. Miriam Cross, general manager. She was talking to a man in a gray suit beside her. They stopped when she saw the small scene near the door. "We're handling it, Miss Cross," Courtney called over. Cross didn't acknowledge her. She walked closer, heels marking time on the marble. She stopped 10 feet away and looked at Fletcher the way people look at problems. Not with contempt, just with the neutral efficiency of someone deciding which category to file it under. Who are you? My name is Fletcher Vance. I own Vance Auto Repair on Route 9 in Kellerton. I service the fleet vehicles for Dunmore Freight, Summit Ridge Landscaping, and 4 other commercial accounts in this county. Accounts that your dealership also holds service contracts on. He held up the folder. I need you to look at what's in here before something gets filed that you can't take back. She looked at the folder, then at him, then at Rosie. Her expression didn't change, but she didn't walk away. If you have a service dispute, you file through. I've filed twice. Both were closed without review. Fletcher's voice stayed flat. I'm not filing again. I'm here because Dunmore Freight was billed $42,000 last year for warranty work on 3 vehicles that were decommissioned and scrapped in 2017. Someone at this dealership is submitting ghost repair claims on vehicles that no longer exist. And whoever is doing it has been doing it for a long time. Silence settled over that corner of the showroom. The piano music kept going. Cross studied him. The gray suit man beside her said something low, something that sounded like it ends here. Cross ignored him too. She looked at Fletcher, then at the folder. You have documentation? Everything I could legally obtain. Parts invoices, VIN records, manufacturer warranty claims. Fletcher held her gaze. I can also tell you that the Meridian GT on your center platform has a 3rd-generation chassis mounting system that wasn't released until 2021. The service manual you're using for recalls on this model is the 2nd-generation version. Whichever technician is pulling the codes on those is getting false readings. That's not fraud. That's just an honest mistake that's going to cost someone a lawsuit when a component fails. Something changed in her eyes. It wasn't much. A slight tightening, like someone who'd just heard a word in a foreign language they recognized without expecting to. How do you know which service manual? Because I wrote part of it, Fletcher said. I was a senior systems engineer at Meridian for 9 years before I left to open the garage. I know what those vehicles are supposed to do and what your records say they're doing. And those 2 things don't match. The silence stretched. Then Miriam Cross turned to Cinderblock. That's enough, she said. Go back to your post. To Courtney. I'll need conference room B cleared. And get Lawrence up here now. Courtney's phone was already in her hand. Cross looked at Fletcher. 5 minutes, she said, and the girl stays at the reception desk. I'll have Courtney get her something to drink. Fletcher looked at Rosie. She was watching him with those steady dark eyes of hers. You okay waiting here for a few minutes? She considered it with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. She looked at Courtney, then back at him. Can I have orange juice? Cross almost smiled. I think that's manageable. They took him upstairs. The conference room had a view of the showroom floor below, all that curated space and carefully lit inventory. Fletcher sat at the table and set his folder in front of him. Gray suit, Lawrence, the dealership's operations director, sat across from him with his arms folded and an expression like a man who'd already decided how this meeting ended. Cross sat at the head of the table. She was quiet for a moment, looking at the folder without aiming it. Walk me through it, she said. Lawrence started to say something. Cross held up one hand without looking at him. Walk me through it, she said again. So Fletcher did. 11 months ago, Dunmore Freight's owner, Paul Dunmore, had come into Vance Auto with a stack of service invoices from Hargrove. Confused and frustrated, his fleet insurance company was flagging discrepancies. Warranty claims filed on vehicles that didn't match VIN records. Parts billed but not scanned into the National Parts Database. Dunmore had assumed it was an administrative error. Fletcher had looked at the invoices and known it wasn't. He'd spent his evenings and weekends cross-referencing, pulling public warranty claim filings, matching them against VIN databases. He had a retired friend at the manufacturer's regional office who'd confirmed, off the record, that multiple claims had been processed with irregular documentation. It wasn't hundreds of dollars. It was closer to $200,000, spread across 14 commercial accounts over 7 years. He laid the papers out on the table one by one. Cross read each page. Lawrence shifted in his chair. His phone buzzed twice, and he silenced it both times. After 20 minutes, Cross set the last page down. Who else has seen this, she asked. Dunmore, his attorney. Fletcher paused. And I sent a summary to the State Dealer Licensing Board last Thursday. They acknowledged receipt. Lawrence uncrossed his arms. You did what? Fletcher looked at him. I gave your dealership 11 chances over 3 months to address this internally. I documented every call, every message. The last time I spoke to someone from your corporate team, they told me my complaint was being escalated and that I should not contact the dealership again while under review. He let that sit for a second. I took that as a threat, so I stopped calling and started filing. Lawrence was on his feet. This is a shakedown. You're trying to… What is he trying to get, Lawrence? Cross's voice was quiet, flat, absolutely certain of itself. Lawrence stopped. She hadn't raised it, hadn't sharpened it. She'd just said it the way you say something that ends an argument because it was never really an argument to begin with. She looked at Fletcher. What do you want? Same thing I've wanted for 11 months. Someone with authority looks at the documentation, acknowledges the problem, and refers it to the appropriate legal and financial channels. Fletcher folded his hands on the table. I'm not interested in a settlement. I'm not interested in anything that makes this disappear. I represent 9 other commercial account holders who were billed fraudulently. Every one of them deserves their money back. Lawrence made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. And you think you're going to get that. I think, Miss Cross is going to look at this documentation and understand that if she doesn't act, the licensing board is going to anyway. Fletcher kept his eyes on Cross, and when they do, it won't be a conversation in a conference room. It'll be an audit, a public record, and a news story. Cross was quiet. Then she said, Lawrence, I need the service department's commercial account files for the last 8 years. All of them. I need you to get our compliance attorney on the phone in the next 30 minutes. And I need you to understand that this conversation stays in this room until I say otherwise. Lawrence looked like he'd swallowed something wrong. Miriam, if we open those files, then close the door when you leave, Cross said. He left. The room was quieter without him. Cross looked at the papers spread across the table. She was still for a long moment, the way someone is still when they're making a decision they can't take back. How long have you been in Kellerton? She asked. 6 years. Before that, 9 years at Meridian's engineering division. Before that, a master's in mechanical systems from Georgia Tech. She nodded slowly. And you opened a garage in a small town. My wife grew up in Kellerton. She wanted to raise Rosie there. He paused. She passed away 2 years ago. We stayed. Cross's expression shifted. Not to pity, something quieter and more honest than that. I'm sorry. Fletcher nodded. He didn't say anything else about it. He never did. Is the girl downstairs always that self-possessed? Cross asked. She handles a lot, Fletcher said, more than she should. Cross looked at the papers again. She picked up the summary page, read it again, set it back down. I built this dealership from a 2-bay service shop in 1998, she said. 14 employees then. 62 now. I've had competitors try to bury me, manufacturers try to squeeze me, recessions try to close me. She looked up. I've never had a guy in a work shirt with his daughter walk in and hand me proof that my own people were stealing from my customers. Fletcher said nothing. It's not a comfortable feeling, Cross said. No, I imagine not. You could have gone straight to the board. Or the press. You didn't. I went to you first, Fletcher said, because I thought you might not know, and because fixing it the right way is better than burning it down. Cross looked at him for a long moment. Who did the warranty fraud? Do you know? Fletcher put his hand on the folder. I have a strong hypothesis. I can share it, but I'd rather your compliance attorney and the board have it simultaneously, so there's no question later about the chain. You're careful. My wife used to say I was paranoid. He almost smiled. She was usually right about most things. Cross picked up her phone. She made a call, spoke quietly, hung up. Then she picked up a second document from the pile, the one Fletcher had flagged with a red tab. She read it for the 3rd time. The parts invoices cross-referenced against the VIN database. This is your work? Yes. I built the spreadsheet over 6 weeks. Every entry is sourced and time-stamped. He paused. I also noticed that 3 of the vehicles built in 2021 had their VINs recycled from a manufacturer recall dataset. Whoever was submitting the claims knew how to pull VINs that would pass an automated check. That's not a service technician who stumbled into fraud. That's someone who understood the warranty system architecture. Cross was very still. Do you know how long it takes to learn the warranty system architecture? In depth? Fletcher said. 2 to 3 years. Minimum. Her jaw tightened. She looked at the red-tabbed page again, and this time something moved across her face. Not uncertainty, but its close relative. The look of someone rereading a thing they'd hoped would say something different. She stood, walked to the window, pressed one hand against the glass. Below, the showroom was going about its day, a couple looking at a sedan, a salesman gesturing. Rosie, visible at the reception desk, apparently explaining something to Courtney with great seriousness, using both hands. Cross watched her for a moment. How old is she? 7, almost 8. She's going to be a handful. Cross's voice had something in it that wasn't quite warmth, but was in the same neighborhood. She already is, Fletcher said. Cross turned back from the window. She picked up her phone again. This time she made 3 calls in quick succession. Fletcher couldn't hear what she said, but the calls were short and he recognized the particular brevity of someone issuing instructions, not having conversations. When she finished, she sat back down. I'm going to need the original documentation. Not copies. Originals. And I'll need a statement from Paul Dunmore and the other account holders. Can you arrange that? They've been waiting to be asked, Fletcher said. She nodded. There's going to be an internal review. It'll be uncomfortable for a lot of people here. It may get complicated before it gets simple. She looked at him steadily. And I need you to understand that I'm acting on this because it's the right thing to do. Not because of the licensing board or the press. Those would have happened regardless. I know, Fletcher said. That's why I'm still sitting here. Something shifted in Cross's expression. Not quite surprise. More like the recognition of a thing you hadn't expected to find. She stood, extended her hand. Fletcher stood and shook it. Her grip was firm and certain, the handshake of someone who'd learned not to waste that gesture on people who didn't mean it. I'll walk you downstairs, she said. They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened, Rosie was still at the reception desk. She'd apparently persuaded Courtney to let her arrange the pen holder by color and height. Courtney looked uncertain whether to be pleased or unsettled. Rosie looked satisfied. She saw Fletcher and slid off the stool. Did you fix it? She asked. We started, he said. That's not the same as yes. No, he said, it's not. But it's a start. Rosie considered this with the same gravity she applied to most things. Then she put her hand in his. Okay, can we get food? I'm hungry. Cross watched this exchange. When she looked back at Fletcher, there was something in her eyes that was harder to name than any of the other things she'd shown him that morning. Thank you for coming in, she said. Thank you for listening. They walked out through the revolving doors. The parking lot was bright and cold, the kind of October light that makes everything look cleaner than it is. Fletcher's truck sat at the back of the lot where he'd parked it specifically, so no one would think he was trying to block the lot or make a scene when he came out. Rosie climbed in. He belted her in, sat behind the wheel, and didn't start the engine for a minute. You okay? Rosie asked. He looked out the windshield at the glass facade of Hargrove Luxury Motors reflecting the cold blue sky. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I think so. She'd brought a book in her backpack. She pulled it out and started reading. Just like that. Because the drama was over and she had things to do. Fletcher started the truck. The next 3 weeks moved in 2 speeds. Work at the garage was slow and steady. Oil changes, tire rotations, a transmission rebuild on a 2009 pickup that took 4 days, and a YouTube deep dive on a specific torque specification he'd forgotten. The kind of work that was honest and satisfying and asked nothing from him except attention. He could lose himself in that. He always could. The other speed was faster and more unpredictable. Cross's compliance attorney reached out 2 days after the meeting, then the licensing board's investigator. Then a call from Paul Dunmore saying his insurance company had gotten involved and things were moving. Then a call from Hargrove's corporate headquarters, not Cross, someone above her, asking Fletcher to come in for a recorded interview. He brought his own recorder. The name that came up in the records, the name Fletcher had put in a sealed envelope when he'd handed Cross the original documentation, the name he'd asked her to pass simultaneously to the attorney and the board, so there was no question about the sequence, was Gerald Marsh, the dealership's fleet service manager, 17-year employee. The kind of man who showed up at the Christmas party, remembered people's kids' names, and had, over the course of 7 years, quietly billed $219,000 in fraudulent warranty claims across 19 commercial accounts. He hadn't worked alone. A junior billing clerk named Todd had processed most of the paperwork, apparently under the impression it was a legitimate practice Gerald had described as an administrative correction process. Todd was 23. Fletcher felt bad about Todd. Gerald had known exactly what he was doing. The licensing board's investigation moved faster than Fletcher had expected. Within 2 weeks, Gerald Marsh's access had been suspended pending review. Within 3, the corporate headquarters had announced an internal audit of all commercial fleet accounts going back a decade. Fletcher got a call from a woman at a law firm he'd never heard of, representing 6 of the commercial account holders who'd hired her collectively. "They'd like to invite you to join the civil action," she said. He thought about it for about 4 seconds. "I'll provide testimony and documentation," he said. "I'm not joining the civil action. I don't want to be a plaintiff." There was a pause. "Most people in your position would." "I don't need money from this," Fletcher said. "I need the accounts to be made whole and Gerald Marsh to be held accountable. Both of those can happen without me." Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Vance, you're the reason this case exists." Fletcher was quiet for a moment. 9 other business owners had those invoices in their files for years, he said. "I just knew what I was looking at." He paused. "Make sure they get their money back. That's what matters." He hung up. Rosie was doing homework at the kitchen table. She was working on long division, her tongue pressed between her teeth in concentration, pencil moving with the focused deliberateness of someone taking a math problem personally. "You done?" she asked without looking up. "For now." "Did the bad guys get in trouble?" Fletcher sat down across from her. "They're getting there." "How long does that take?" "Longer than you'd want and shorter than you'd fear." He picked up one of her completed problems and checked it. "Got it right." He put it back, usually. She seemed to accept this as sufficient. "Did they say sorry?" she asked. He thought about Miriam Cross, in her office the week after. She'd called him directly, not through attorneys. She'd said she owed him more than a meeting. She'd been running that dealership for 24 years, and she hadn't seen it. That wasn't acceptable to her. Her voice when she said it had been quiet and controlled in the particular way of someone keeping something much larger in check. "Some of them," he said, "the ones who matter." Rosie thought about this, pencil hovering over her paper. "Mom used to say sorry was just the start," she said. "You had to actually change." Fletcher looked at his daughter. "She was right," he said. "The civil case took 11 months. Gerald Marsh's attorney tried to negotiate a settlement 3 times. Each time, the commercial account holders, represented collectively, with Fletcher providing documentation but not damages claims, declined. Fletcher testified twice. Both times he was asked the same question in different forms. Why had he pursued this instead of simply switching his fleet clients to different service providers and letting it go? He gave the same answer both times. Because it wasn't just my clients. Because there were 18 other businesses paying for work that was never done, and parts that were never installed, and warranties that were being stolen from right under their hoods. He paused the second time he said it, because the attorney had leaned forward like she expected him to elaborate, to get emotional, to make it personal. He didn't, because someone who understood the system well enough to exploit it should be accountable to that same system. That's all. The judge awarded restitution to 17 of the 19 affected accounts. The 19th had records too old to recover. Gerald Marsh received 4 years, suspended to 18 months with restitution requirements and a permanent ban from working in automotive services or financial operations. The morning the verdict came down, Fletcher was in the middle of a brake job on a 2016 Tahoe. His phone buzzed. He read the message from Paul Dunmore. They got him and set the phone back on the workbench. He finished the brake job first. Cross called him that afternoon. She'd restructured the commercial fleet service process, she said. Third-party audit of all warranty claims going forward. New compliance officer. She'd promoted Todd, the junior clerk, after he'd cooperated fully with investigators. He was now running the billing department under new oversight. She'd lost 3 salespeople and 2 service managers who'd either known something or suspected something and said nothing. "I thought you'd want to know," she said. Fletcher wiped his hands on a shop rag. "I appreciate that. I also wanted to tell you." She paused, and it was the first time he'd heard her pause like she was choosing words carefully rather than assembling them efficiently. "I almost didn't come downstairs that day. When Courtney called up, I almost let security handle it and went back to my meeting." He didn't say anything. "I don't know what made me come down," she said. "Maybe the way Courtney described it. Maybe just the timing." She went quiet for a second. "I'm glad I did." "So am I," Fletcher said. After he hung up, he stood in the garage for a minute. The Tahoe was done. The bay was clean. Outside, it was getting dark, the streetlight in front of the shop flickering on the way it always did at the same time every evening. He locked up, drove to school, picked up Rosie. She had an art project under her arm, a watercolor painting of what appeared to be a purple dog standing in front of a blue building. She presented it to him like evidence. "That's the garage," she said, "and that's you." He looked at the purple dog for a moment. He had apparently a very round head and no neck. "Good likeness," he said. "I know." She climbed into the truck and buckled herself in with the efficiency of a child who'd done it 10,000 times. She opened her book. They drove home. Fletcher made dinner, the pasta with the jarred sauce that Rosie liked, the one her mother had served every Thursday, because it was fast, and she'd been tired by Thursday, and it had become the Thursday thing, and then it had just become the thing they did because it was theirs. He didn't think about it consciously anymore. His hands just did it. Rosie ate with one hand, holding her book in the other. After dinner, after dishes, after the homework check, and the argument about whether brushing teeth for 60 seconds counted as actually brushing. It didn't. The answer was always no. He sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm and thought about nothing in particular for a while. His phone showed a news alert. Local business outlet. Hargrove Luxury Motors compliance overhaul following fraud settlement. He read the first 2 paragraphs. His name was in the third. He put the phone down. Rosie appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, hair not quite fully combed, which was standard. "Story," she said. He thought for a second. Then he said, "Once there was a man who knew how machines worked from the inside out, and he found a problem that nobody else could see, because nobody else knew what to look for." "Did he fix it?" she asked. He came in and said, "Here's the problem. Here's the proof. Here's what should happen." He paused, and then he went back to work. "That's it?" "That's mostly it." She thought about this, leaning against the doorframe, with the assessing look she'd inherited from her mother, the one that suggested she was comparing what she'd been told against what she already suspected. Was he scared? Fletcher looked at her. "Yeah," he said. "Some of it." "Because of the big building?" "Because of you," he said. Because the whole time he was thinking about whether he was doing the right thing, whether it was going to work out, whether he was going to have to explain something hard to someone he didn't want to hurt. She was quiet. "But it did work out," she said. "Yeah, so it was okay to be scared." Fletcher set down his cup. "Yeah, Bird. That's the whole point." She seemed satisfied with this. She crossed the kitchen and hugged him the way she always hugged him, with her full weight and her face pressed against his shoulder, like she was checking that he was still there. He held on. Then she was done and pulled back, because she was 7 and had a threshold for sentiment. "Okay," she said. "Good night." "Good night, Rosie Bird." She went to bed. He heard her light click off, heard the particular silence of the house settling around her. He finished his coffee cold, rinsed the cup, stood at the kitchen window for a minute, looking at the dark backyard, the maple tree his wife had planted the year they'd moved in, Rosie's bike leaning against the fence. Everything exactly where it had always been. Not the same. Just where it belonged. He turned off the light and went to bed. 6 weeks later, Miriam Cross drove into Kellerton on a Tuesday morning with a car that needed a second opinion on a valve issue one of her technicians had flagged. She could have gone anywhere. Kellerton was 40 minutes from the dealership. Fletcher was under a Subaru when she pulled in. He heard the engine and recognized the model from the sound, 3rd Gen Meridian CT, running a little rough on the left bank. He rolled out from under the Subaru and looked at the car and then at Cross, standing next to it in a wool coat and sensible shoes. "Valve seal," he said without being asked. "Left bank. Your tech was right." She looked at the car, then at him. Then she said, "I wanted to see where you work." He looked around the garage. 2 bays. A pegboard of tools organized by function. A workbench that needed cleaning. Rosie's drawing of the purple dog taped to the support column where he could see it from both bays. "Not much to see," he said. Cross looked at the drawing, then at the tools, then at the calendar on the wall, the kind with classic car photography, the kind you bought at the hardware store. "You built something here," she said. He wiped his hands. "It's a 2-bay garage in a small town. That's not what I mean." He looked at her. Cross said quietly, "I've spent 24 years learning that the people who are actually good at what they do are usually not the people who talk about it the most." Fletcher didn't say anything. She nodded at the Meridian CT. "Can you fix it today?" "Depends on whether I have the seal in stock." He walked over and opened the hood. He found what he was looking for in about 4 seconds. Yeah, I've got it. She handed him the keys. He got to work.